All right, let's jump into this deep dive into Spinoza's ethics. Just skimming the excerpts, this is going to be a wild one. Some seriously radical ideas, even now.
Absolutely. Spinoza was grappling with the biggest questions ever, God, nature, the human mind, and he built this whole philosophy like a massive puzzle.
So help us put the puzzle together. Who was Spinoza, and why does his work still matter?
Picture 17th century Amsterdam, right? Buzzing with new ideas, challenging old ways of thinking. That's where Spinoza wrote Ethics, which, by the way, caused a ton of trouble. His ideas were so different from what the religious authorities believed, he was basically excommunicated.
Wow, he really ruffled some feathers. What was it about his ideas that made people so uncomfortable?
Well, for one, his concept of God. Not your typical image of God in the sky judging us. Spinoza basically said God is nature. He called God substance, meaning the ultimate reality existing on its own.
So instead of God creating the universe, Spinoza is saying God is the universe. That's a huge difference.
Exactly. And here's the big thing. Everything in the universe, us included, is just a modification of this one substance, this God. We're like waves in a giant ocean, each with our own shape and movement, but still part of that ocean. Inseparable. That's why he wrote that famous line, "Whatsoever is in God, and without God nothing can be or be conceived."
Whoa, that's deep. It makes you feel kind of small, but also connected to something way bigger.
Exactly. That's the beauty of Spinoza. He helps us see ourselves as part of this grand interconnected web. But then, it raises a question. If God is this one substance, how do we experience so many different things? Physical objects, thoughts, feelings. How do we go from that oneness to the diversity we see every day?
All right, it's like saying everything is made of the same dough, but that we get bread, cookies, pizza, all these different forms.
And that's where attributes come in. They're what our intellect perceives as the essence of substance. Think of them like facets of a diamond, different colors and reflections depending on how you turn it, but it's still one diamond.
So different ways of experiencing the same underlying reality.
Exactly. Spinoza focuses on two, extension, which is the physical world, and thought, the world of our minds, ideas, emotions. Just like those diamond facets, they're inseparable. Two sides of the same coin.
I think I'm starting to get it. So our bodies are part of extension, our minds are part of thought, but they're both expressions of the same substance, the same God. But there's still something that's kind of hard to grasp. Spinoza said the human mind is the idea of the human body. What did he mean by that?
That is one of the most fascinating and yet challenging parts of his philosophy. Okay, think of it like this. Your body, it's a physical thing, existing in space and time with its shape and structure. Your mind, though, that's your awareness of your body, your thoughts, feelings, perceptions. For Spinoza, these aren't separate. They're two sides of the same coin. Your mind is like the inner blueprint of your body. It's how that one substance expresses itself as a thinking, experiencing being.
So if I stub my toe and feel pain, that pain isn't just in my mind, it's an expression of the same substance that makes up my physical toe.
Precisely. Think about this example Spinoza uses. He asks us to imagine a tree that could talk. This tree might think it's choosing to grow leaves or bear fruit, right? But that's because it doesn't understand what's causing those actions. We're kind of like that talking tree. We think we're making free choices, but really all our thoughts and actions are determined by the nature of substance, those laws of nature, cause and effect.
So are we saying that our sense of ourselves as individuals with free will is an illusion?
Well, that takes us to the next step, and Spinoza definitely dives into that. But before we jump into the wild world of free will, let's look at how our limited perceptions affect how we understand the world.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
How does Spinoza explain that gap between our limited experience and the true nature of reality?
Well, he points out that we tend to divide things up into parts. Like, we think of a line as being made up of all these individual points, or time as a series of separate moments. But he argues that that's just our imagination, not true understanding. If we could see things like God sees them, we'd see that everything is interconnected, this continuous flow of substance.
It's like trying to capture a river in a series of snapshots. You lose the sense of flow, the way the water is all connected.
Perfect analogy. And that limited perception, Spinoza says, leads to a lot of confusion, even suffering. It's when we forget that we're part of this greater whole that we get caught up in negative emotions and do things that aren't good for us.
So what's the solution? How can we get past these limitations and truly understand ourselves and the universe?
That's where Spinoza's insights about reason, emotions, and finding true happiness come in. And that, my friend, is a story for the next part of our deep dive.
All right, so We've covered some pretty big ideas, right? We're all modifications of this one substance, this God, and our minds are like inner blueprints of our bodies. So where does that leave us with choices, living a good life? Does Spinoza even think we have free will?
That's the question, isn't it? And Spinoza's answer, it's both challenging and kind of liberating. He didn't believe in free will in, like, the traditional way. Not like we have this magic power to just decide to do things separate from any other cause.
Okay, so if our actions aren't free, are we basically robots just running a program set by, like, nature or God?
Not exactly. Spinoza wouldn't say we're mindless robots. We have a kind of freedom, but it's a freedom that comes from, get this, understanding.
Freedom from understanding. How does that set us free?
Well, think about it. The more we understand the causes behind our actions, the less we're controlled by them. It's like if you're afraid of the dark because you imagine monsters, right? But then you turn on the light and see there's nothing there, the fear goes away.
So it's about seeing through the illusions that hold us back, the fears and desires we don't really understand. But how do we actually do that? How do we live a more free and fulfilling life, according to Spinoza?
Well, for Spinoza, living ethically isn't about following some set of rules handed down. It's about aligning your actions with your understanding of how reality actually works. Remember, he saw everything as interconnected, that flow of substance. So when we act based on that understanding, when we act from reason and not just passion or ignorance, well, that's where we tap into a deeper kind of freedom.
It's not about denying our desires, but about, like, understanding where they come from and if they're leading us toward what's truly good for us.
Precisely. He even had ideas about what those beneficial things are, what truly leads to happiness. And for him, it wasn't just about, fleeting pleasures, but something much deeper.
Oh, interesting. So what was his definition of happiness?
Well, Spinoza believed true happiness, what he called blessedness, comes from understanding and living in line with reason. It's about developing a way of seeing the world, seeing things clearly, and understanding why they are the way they are.
So instead of chasing external things or trying to control everything, we find happiness by, like, aligning ourselves with the natural order.
You got it. And it doesn't mean we become passive or just give up. Actually, it's the opposite. The more we understand ourselves and the world, the better we can act, make choices that are really good for us and, help others too.
But how do we actually put that into practice? Can you give an example of, like, making a choice from reason instead of from blind passion?
Sure. Let's say someone's easily angered. They blow up over little things, just reacting without thinking. Now, Spinoza would say that anger is coming from a misperception, a misunderstanding of the situation. Maybe they see a threat that isn't there, or they're holding on to a belief that's not helping them.
So they need to, like, take a step back, pause before reacting.
Exactly. Taking that pause, asking what's really happening, why am I angry? That's how they can start to loosen that emotion's grip and make a more reasoned choice.
We need to become detectives of our own minds, figure out what's driving our actions.
I like that. And the more we practice that kind of self-awareness, the more we develop our ability to reason. Then we're more free from being controlled by our passions. But there's another important part of Spinoza's ethics, and I think it's really relevant today.
I'm listening. What else did he say about living a good life?
He emphasized accepting what we can't control. And I don't mean like giving up or being resigned, just recognizing we're finite beings in an infinite universe, right?
Yeah.
Some things are always going to be beyond our understanding and control.
That's a humbling thought.
Yeah.
But how does acceptance make life better?
Well, when we resist what we can't change, when we get all worked up about injustice or our limitations, we cause a lot of suffering. But when we accept those things calmly, when we let go of needing to control everything, that frees up a ton of energy to focus on what we can influence.
It sounds like Spinoza is suggesting we surrender, but not to fate or some authority. Surrender to, like, the wisdom of nature itself.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And this surrender, this acceptance, it's not about weakness. It's actually a source of strength, resilience. It helps us go through the ups and downs of life more gracefully, knowing we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
So in the end, Spinoza's ethics is about understanding yourself, understanding the world, and then acting based on that understanding.
Yeah. And when we do that, we tap into a kind of joy that comes from being in sync with reality. It's the joy of seeing how everything's connected, the joy of knowing our place in the universe. It's the joy of knowing that we are, like Spinoza said, a part of God.
This has been an incredible journey so far. We've gone through so much. From Spinoza's radical view of God to his ideas about the mind, emotions, freedom. What stands out to you is the most important wisdom he offers for, navigating life today. It's amazing how, even after centuries, Spinoza's ideas still feel so relevant. For me, what really hits home is that idea that true freedom comes from understanding. Not about having tons of choices or controlling everything. It's about seeing clearly, letting go of those illusions and aligning ourselves with the natural order.
I totally agree. And that kind of freedom, it's available to everyone no matter what their situation is. It's not about wealth, status, or even like physical ability. It comes from within, from developing that capacity for reason and understanding.
Almost like he's giving us this guide to inner peace, a way to find contentment even when everything around us feels crazy.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the beautiful thing about Spinoza's philosophy is that it's not just, some abstract theory. He's always pushing us to use these insights in our lives to see how they can help us understand our experiences and find a deeper sense of meaning, purpose.
So how do we do that? Like, what are some actual steps we can take to bring Spinoza's wisdom into everyday life?
Remember how Spinoza said that understanding specific things helps us understand God, or you could say the nature of reality? So what if you picked one thing in your life, a relationship, a hobby, maybe a problem you're dealing with, and really tried to understand it deeply?
So it's like we're becoming investigators of our own experience,
Right.
looking past the surface to uncover those hidden connections, the causes and effects that are shaping our reality.
Exactly. And as you go deeper into that one thing, you might be surprised by what you find. Maybe patterns you didn't see before, connections to other parts of your life. You might even get glimpses of that interconnected web Spinoza talked about.
Like you're zooming in on a tiny detail of this tapestry, and then suddenly, boom, you realize it's all part of this huge, intricate design.
And in that process, something pretty magical happens. Our perspective starts to shift. We see ourselves and the world in a new way. Instead of feeling separate and isolated, we start to feel connected, like we belong.
It's like we're rediscovering our place in the universe, recognizing we are, as Spinoza put it, a part of God, part of this incredible interconnected universe.
And that realization, that shift, it can be incredibly freeing. It can get rid of those anxieties and fears that come from feeling small, insignificant. It helps us face challenges with courage, calmness, and it can fill us with this deep joy, a joy that comes from knowing we're part of something way bigger than ourselves.
This deep dive into Spinoza's ethics has been really eye-opening. We've explored some complex ideas, but I think we've come away with a better understanding of ourselves and the universe we live in.
It's been awesome sharing this journey with you. I hope our listener feels the same way. Remember, Spinoza's philosophy isn't just some mental exercise. It's a call to action, an invitation to live a more conscious, meaningful, joyful life. So go out there, explore, understand, and embrace the way everything is connected.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon to explore more fascinating ideas. Until then, keep seeking, keep questioning, keep exploring the wonders of existence.